Hi everyone. Stéphanie and I have the very difficult task to disturb your lunch. So we hope you won't be too angry at us. We would like to spend the next hour or so not only to help you digest, but also to help us work on these co-creation topics that have emerged this morning from the various conversations. So what we would like to propose that we're gonna very briefly maybe set with the stage about what is co-creation, what is it needed now, and why social entrepreneurs and businesses are relevant to this co-creation world, which is that we are entering now. Then we'll give you obviously some examples. Then we will have the testimonials from Anka, from SAP, who's going to share with us a very interesting, very ambitious project between SAP and an Ashoka fellow about how to provide jobs for autistic people. And you will see that it's not an anecdote. It's a very ambitious and very interesting project. And we might have some interactions with Gonzalo Munoz as well, who will share with us not only what is vision of a social entrepreneur of co-creation, but also how he's currently now working towards partnering with large corporations in order to accelerate social change. And I think this is the most important piece. We would like to interact with you about co-creation. So what I would like to do first is just to ask who is in the room, not namely, but at least to know who are the people who are coming from the business world. Please raise your hands. The business world. Okay, don't be shy. It's a... okay. Yeah, exactly. That's so people will get with a basket to get some money from you guys. So thank you. Who is coming from the social entrepreneurship world? Who is a social entrepreneur or an NGO person? Okay. And who are the hybrid people here? The people who are considered being part of both worlds? Great. Thank you. Next question. Who think you have already undertaken a co-creation initiative with someone from the other sector? Who has been leading a co-creation project? Okay. So you can be sure that we'll get back to you on the third part to get your lessons. And maybe what you could start do, because you know the blood during the digestion period is mainly around the stomach, so I know it's going to take a bit of time, but if you could just think about what would we like as a group here from the Zermatt Summit, what are maybe the two co-creation projects that we would like to create, to incept here, and that we could come back on next year and to report on, to see whether actually what we have been saying from the beginning this morning about the necessity to invent new models, to come together, to invent new solutions can really become real. And so please start thinking about what is the one project you would like to work on. Is it on new finance models? Is it on health? Is it on education? Is it on something very concrete? Because that will be also the third part of this discussion. So we're going to start about very short introduction about social entrepreneurs and co-creation, and I'm happy to do that with my colleague Stéphanie. You will see that Stéphanie is much more educated on these co-creation topics than I am, because she's been working with Ashoka for almost 10 years now, especially on those topics. So she will be leading the show. I'm just here maybe to set a bit the stage. Social entrepreneurs, we have talked about that earlier. That's an hybrid animal, something with definitely an entrepreneur, but with a social purpose. And at Ashoka, for those who don't know, we've been looking for the last 30 years about the most innovative social entrepreneurs. And in order to find them, we have defined criteria. And to us, a social entrepreneur is someone who is able to come up not only with a system-changing innovation, but someone who is also very creative, has a very entrepreneurial spirit, and obviously is after social impact and with a very perfect ethical fiber. This is the Ashoka definition. We won't be arguing about whether this is right or not. This is the way we look at social entrepreneurs and the way we find them. But I think that what is important is that those social entrepreneurs, those people with this type of qualities and criteria, or actually addressing any type of social issues. And by social, actually, we mean societal. It's really about every type of human needs on the earth. So Ashoka has been about that. And when you look at the life cycle of a social entrepreneur, you can see that there are several important stages in their development, in their growth. And very often they start with a very, they have a strong ambition from day one, but they start with a very small project. And actually where Ashoka is willing to really work with them is when they have started, when they have piloted their ideas and when they are starting to scale up. And this is where they need totally different things. They need money, they need capital, they need networks, they need pro bono support, and this is what we try to bring to them. Actually, a few years back, after having elected something like 2,000 social entrepreneurs globally, we looked at our impact, and we looked at our impact compared to the most pressing social issues in the world. And we had to be honest and say, okay, that's great to have the leading network of social entrepreneurs, but honestly, when you look at the size of the issues, we will never get there, even if we multiply the size of this network by 10 or 100. That's not the point. If we really want to have social change at a very large scale, then we need to tear down the walls between the business sector, the social sector, and the public authorities. And this is why Ashoka 2.0, let's say, is really about creating this movement of leaders, of change makers within the business world, the social sector, the public authorities, the media, the business schools, who really want to co-create new answers and new ways to answer, to address the social challenges of this world. And actually, when you look at the size of social issues, you can really see that that's the only way to get there. And that most of the time, those three actors, just to name the main three, are actually having a piece of the solution. They are all addressing the same problem, but with a different view, with a different way of doing, and with a different interest. So what if we were able to really invent value chains in which actually each of those can really provide what they have, what they have the best in terms of assets and knowledge? What if the social entrepreneurs most of the time could provide innovation, the industry could provide the capital, the distribution network, and so on, and the public authorities could help with the regulation and to really incentivize the development of those hybrid models. This is what we are about, but we know that if we want to do that, we cannot do it alone. And as I was explaining this morning, I think that the role of social entrepreneurs is really to recruit more and more change makers around them in order to make this happen. So we're gonna give you a few examples of social entrepreneurs and how they are currently scaling up and how they work with a few businesses. Just to give you some examples. Again, this is not the perfect truth. This is just a few examples just to start the discussion. And then we'll have this testimonial from Anka from SAP. Over to you, Stéphanie.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's hard to do justice to the work of a social entrepreneur on a PowerPoint slide, but just two quick examples to give you a sense of what they are doing. There are also social entrepreneurs in the room whom you can interact with. Ashoka started in developing countries, so we started in India, in Mexico, in Indonesia, and then moved to the developed world. So we wanted to give you two examples. One is Jamie Bora and Ingrid Mourot in Kenya. So Ingrid was a UN officer for many years and landed to a slum in Kenya and started to see how people were living and what all the market failures were there in the slums. And she was particularly shocked at the sort of lack of opportunities of these slum dwellers in Kenya and decided to work on microfinance, but to work with the poorest of the poor, where everyone, including microfinance organizations, was saying it's not possible to offer credit to prisoner or former prisoners, prostitutes, beggars. She actually turned the system around and found a way to serve these families and to provide them credits and new opportunities. So for them, when she started actually giving out loans to these sort of poorest of the poor, she found out that many were not reimbursing their credit. And she went from families to families to understand why they were not reimbursing this credit. And many of these families had a sick person in the family. And so there was a healthcare issue. They had heavy expenses in terms of healthcare and were not able to repay their loans. So she decided to include a healthcare insurance, to include business schools sort of for this population, and to include as well sort of rehabilitation program in terms of drug and alcohol, so that they could become clients of microcredit services. She's done also an incredible work in terms of building social capital in the slums. And actually, all of the staff members of Jamii Bora are ex or current client. And when there were sort of about 2 years ago, sort of heavy riots in the slums, sort of Jamii Bora played a big role and a critical role in negotiating together with the government, the citizens, the people in the slums. So it's amazing in terms of impact, not only the number of people she's been serving, and this is one of the fastest growing banks in Kenya, but also the social capital that's built around this model. So this is just one example from Kenya, and I will let Arnaud talk about France as well, because of course there are many societal issues in
France
Europe,
as well.
in France,
yes,
and Switzerland.
and more actually. And I think it's really important, because when you think in terms of social entrepreneurship, most of the time people think about developing countries, but it's relevant everywhere. And you will see that in particular in Europe, we need to have those social entrepreneurs as well. Guillaume is a horse teacher by training. So he was definitely not supposed to be a social entrepreneur, but this guy was interested in many things and ended up being working with the social housing agency, and was seeing that even though the rents were very, very low for those people, they were actually not paying. So when he went to understand what was happening, he understood that actually people were not paying their rent because they had first to feed their children, and that was probably proportionally the first amount of money that they have to dedicate every month. So the question was, do we have to send those people to what we call the restaurant du cœur, when you get food for free and those type of things? But this is not very empowering. And he was really worried with that, because most of the time when you put people in a position of being beneficiaries, getting things for free, the only thing that they can say is thank you. They are not behaving as clients. They even cannot make a choice. They are just here to receive for free what you are giving them. And it's a real problem. And many social entrepreneurs look at this saying, we don't have to look at these people as beneficiaries. We should look at those people as potential clients. So what he decided to do was to create a network of something like 160 social groceries now, which is really addressing this problem by actually putting the people in a position of being clients. In going to a social grocery, where you have, like in any grocery, many products actually that you can buy, so you can make your choice, you can decide what you want to eat, you can decide what you want to give to your children, etc. The difference with a regular supermarket, I would say, is that you just pay a portion of the regular price, and the savings that you do between the real price and what you pay has to be reinvested in something which is about getting your kids back to school or having less debt, and so on and so on. So it's a very interesting way to really incentivize the fact that not only people are clients and you give them their dignity back, which is really important, but also you incentivize them to really understand what is important, how to manage your household budget, and so on and so on. So Guillaume has been doing that for many years. It was very successful. But because most of the social entrepreneurs are not just about addressing one particular social issue, and because poverty is not just about one particular social issue, he discovered that when you look at this from a health perspective, and when you look at this from the obesity perspective, for instance, most of the people who are actually struck by obesity are the poorest people, because they actually don't know exactly how to eat. They are actually buying the largest, the most expensive products, which are the already cooked products and so on, which are not really good for health. And actually, there is what we call the poverty penalty. So he decided to go to the many producers of fruits and vegetables that don't sell everything every day, and to to take those food, to take this food because it goes to the recycling industry, and to be able to redistribute that in the groceries. And because there are also remaining fruits and vegetables, he decided to create several factories to transform that into soups, into fruit juice, and so on, and to make money in order to reinvest this money in the organization. And by doing that, he's actually having a very profitable business model, providing health, giving dignity to people, and to us this is the right example of a social entrepreneur who is addressing things on a very entrepreneurial spirit. So this is what we wanted to set as a few examples of social entrepreneurs, and now Stéphanie will explain to you why co-creation between those two actors is not only relevant to anyone, but what should we leverage in those three cases.
Yeah, this is a frame that we put together, but this is here to be debated and discussed, so we'd love your feedback about it. But we talked in the latest session about sort of diverging interest, but common goal that could be established between social entrepreneurs or mission-driven organization, companies on the other side, as well as the public sector. So we'll give a concrete example later on, and Anka will be here also to share her testimony from the SAP side. But what we see is that we can definitely build partnership based on win-win. Sort of this is the core. This is not for the sake of building partnership, but where can what's in it for the key partners. And the way we look at it is that the social entrepreneur. I mean, for the social entrepreneur, as the curve that you saw earlier in the slide was alluding to, scaling is really the name of the game. So this is, there are sometimes superstars, they are everywhere, they are trying to do everything, but they have very little capacity. So sometimes you see them and say, well, this is wonderful, but they are either on their own or with a very little team. So it's hard to scale in this condition on a shoestring budget. So how can a social entrepreneur could leverage all the assets that corporations represent? And I'm not only talking about money or investment capacity, but really sort of the asset, the ability to produce at scale, to distribute at scale, the logistic, the infrastructure, the research and development capacity. So this is incredible. And this could be, this is already happening, sort of a gold mine for social entrepreneurs that have insight into, what are the market failures today? What are the needs of low-income people? How can, what are solutions that have been piloted? So if we can bring together sort of the insights of social entrepreneurs and the ability to reach scale of corporations, this is a big win. And what's in it for corporations? So we are not only talking about philanthropic model, although philanthropy has a very sort of legitimate place in creating social good, but we are talking about opportunity for growth, sort of new market. Novartis was talking about India, what is called sometimes the BOP. So you see there are the next billion people that live in poverty in the world. But it's also about innovation, taking a long-term view and seeing sort of what are the possible innovation, not only in product and services, this is one thing, but also in terms of business models. So this is very insightful and very instructive, as well as, of course, sort of the positioning in terms of corporate social responsibility and the employee motivation. So I think one of the motto of Zermatt is changing minds and hearts, and we see, of course, that young people, people who are in the university today, in business schools and so on, are extremely motivated by combining business and social. But current employees, collaborators of corporations are also looking for purpose, and we see this increasingly, and many companies are already implementing programs to respond to these needs and to be able to retain their best collaborators. And of course, sort of the role of government is not to be forgotten. So this is, if we operate in developing countries, developed world, this is very different. Sometimes the government, as we were saying this morning, is, has the tendency to withdraw. But there's also a big opportunity for government to see what kind of innovations are born from the grassroots, what kind of innovations are working and solutions are working, and how can they sort of save on public spending to basically invest in solutions that work. So this is sort of this win-win-win. Actually, there's a win missing framework of co-creation that we would like to discuss with you. And this is also sort of a framework based on complementary assets. So this is, core. Again, sort of, I will partner with, another organization only if I'm tapping into a very specific expertise or strengths. We have been talking for a while, but people thought it was a very scary word, hybrid value chain, so it sounds very technical, but this is really, the idea is to interlinking the value chains of social entrepreneurs, mission-driven organizations, and companies, so that depending on their assets, they could play a role in, again, in product development, in distribution, in giving access to finance to people, in financial education maybe, but seeing where the different sectors can play a role. So an example of co-creation in action called what we call housing for all in India. So there's a huge deficit of homes in India, so 26 million homes. And the system is not working. There is actually a big, all the numbers are big in India, but there is a big segment of the population that are families who live in slums that are not the poorest of the poor. They may earn about 3 minimum salaries a month, and they aspire to leave the slum and to actually invest in a decent apartment and to bring up their children in this decent apartment or home. But there is a shortage of affordable homes for this segment. And these people also are part of the informal system, so they would not be eligible for a mortgage. So what we did together with many players, and this is interesting because this is not only a partnership between one company and one mission-driven organization, but this is really bringing together many citizen sector organizations, many financial institutions, many developers together to try to fix the system and find a solution that could be scalable. So we started to see the real estate developers and saying, okay, there is a market for you. If you find a way to build affordable homes, you have a whole segment of the population that would be ready to invest in this home. But you need to lower down the price, and you need to listen to the preferences of these people to understand what are the kind of design, architecture they are looking for. At the beginning, they didn't believe us. So we needed to work with social entrepreneurs and citizen sector organizations to do surveys of families. And we did about 8,000 surveys to find out what were sort of the families' preferences in terms or aspirations in terms of housing, what were their revenue levels, and what were their access to credit. And we came back to the developers saying, okay, now we have the data. And they started to think, this is interesting. And we were able to work with now, so we work with about 10 of them. We started in Ahmedabad and then Pune, and this is something that's replicating. We work with architects and designers that are very close to the populations. And for example, some of the apartment that was designed, you can enter the toilet through the balcony. So this is something that people wanted. You need also to think about how to optimize the space, because you are talking about a very small space, and even a fridge could actually transform the whole setting of the apartment. Another sort of big issue that needed to be addressed is access to finance, as I was saying, sort of for the informal sector. So we worked very closely with grassroots organization in the slums to be sort of demand aggregator and to bring together sort of groups of people, of families who want to invest in new apartment and be able to do some of the work that a traditional bank would do for traditional credit, sort of being able to screen the client and see, okay, who has the capacity now to afford, such an apartment. So this is sort of creating a platform to be able to screen clients eligible for loans. So what's interesting about this model, we had lots of trials and errors, and this is still something that's sort of moving and growing. But we are trying to find out, how this could be brought from town to town, from city to city, so that it can scale up. And we're creating a role that we call hybrid entrepreneur. That's somebody who is bringing together sort of a neutral party that will bring together the real estate developers, the finance institution, the slum organizations, and so on. So this is the role that we, Ashoka, played at the beginning, but we are definitely not housing expert, and we cannot, continue for the next 50 years working on housing in India. But we want to set up a system that would be able to live on its own and to grow on its own. So this is one sort of interesting model that we found about this hybrid entrepreneur working at a city level. And talking about the public sector, so we started sort of focusing on cooperation, social organization working together, because as Ashoka, we always have the tendency to go with the entrepreneurs. But we saw that there was also a big need in terms of creating a better environment for low-income housing in India. So right now, you don't have any standards for quality housing. So it would be very hard for me to know if, a tile is of good quality, and it's also very hard for a low-income person to figure out whether the home that they are buying is actually of quality. And of course, this is a huge risk. This is a long-term investment. And this is very important to ensure that the developers that work in this program will deliver the best quality homes for these people. So we are working together with different organizations, from the IFC to the government of India, on this sort of development of standards that we call CASA, to have an environment that would ensure the quality of the people, of the housing for these low-income people. So this is how, the public sector and sort of the working also on the legal environment is definitely part of this co-creation work. What we have learned over the years, so we've worked in different countries, different sectors on co-creation. We've seen many things. We've seen social entrepreneurs not willing to enter, corporation offices because they thought that they had always fought against a corporation for all of their lives. So we had some time to offer a neutral space for them to meet. So we've seen sort of quite a lot of things, and we have a lot of stories to tell, but we don't have time today. So this is, of course, about collaborative entrepreneurship. This is about innovation, sort of being able to think outside the box and think about sort of different type of approaches. And two sort of levers of actions. I mean, if we think about how to develop business model that would create shared value, that would have an economic and a social impact, two levers of action that we are seeing is, of course, how to leverage social innovation, how to support and leverage sort of solutions that come from the ground, as well as how to, and this, again, this is coming to transform in hearts and minds, how to create a new type of leadership, and especially sort of targeting cooperation. So we'll have a few sort of suggestions that we wanted to put on the table later, but I let the microphone to Arnaud just to talk briefly about what we are doing in Making More Health.
Yeah, sure, and then we'll ask Anka to come and to really illustrate what she's doing with this AP and a great Ashoka fellow. Making More Health is a global initiative in the health sector that we co-created with Boehringer Ingelheim. Boehringer Ingelheim is a pharma company, medium size, I would say 15 billion turnover. And we decided 2 years ago to partner in order to think about what is the best way to give more access to more people on Earth. And in order to do so, we had to challenge first the culture of the company, which is a top-down culture in terms of innovation. The pharma game is most of the time investing massively in finding the right molecules and protect them, and then sell it to probably the up of the pyramid, where we were actually targeting the bottom. So what we had to install in terms of discussion with BI was, look, you are the best in probably in finding the new molecules, but what about finding health solutions from the bottom? And they said, what does that mean? We said, look, we believe that we have social entrepreneurs that could be of interest to you. So why don't you support a critical mass of social entrepreneurs globally that will not only allow you to understand what is a social entrepreneur, but also to gather and to understand trends in the health sector from the bottom and from those people working very closely with those disadvantaged population. And we did this with by supporting 50 social entrepreneurs globally. We also ran two what we call Changemakers competition, which is an online tool to gather and to crowdsource innovation, because many people have a piece of the solution, and the idea is really to gather and to collect all those pieces together. So we did that. We collected something like 800 projects globally, and we analyzed from a social business perspective the trends and patterns. We came back to BI saying, okay, this is what we see in terms of trends for the health sector in the coming years. And that's happening today, sorry. And they said, well, that's quite interesting, because what you are telling us is actually something that we know. So we are actually not very impressed. But what you are telling us is what we learned from the prospective studies that we buy very expensively. and that explain us where the health sector is going in 30 years or 50 years from now, and you are telling us that social entrepreneurs are already there. So suddenly they understood that working closely with social entrepreneurs was a way to really accelerate innovation, to source innovation, and to stop reinventing the wheel. And that it was not just about drugs and pills, it was about health solutions, it was about prevention, it was about actually enlarging a bit the approach of the health sector. And it was very instrumental for this to have those social entrepreneurs and to really engage those peer-to-peer discussions between people from the company and the social entrepreneurs. So that was very important. The second very important pillar was to leverage the manpower of the company and to really try to empower each of the employees to become a change maker, to think about what they could do. And we designed a very large spectrum of opportunities, from very low-touch things to high-touch one, where, for instance, you have now the top executives or the future top executives of the company going in residence with the social entrepreneur for several weeks or several months. And this is part of their curricula now as a top talent development program. And in order to understand differently, this new world, and obviously you can learn this in the best business school of the world, but you can also spend a few months with a social entrepreneur, and I can tell you that it's really interesting. And not only it has increased the loyalty of the employees towards the company, but also it has really empowered those people to come back and say, no, okay, we need to do things a bit differently, and there are now movers and shakers within the company. We now have insiders, and this is great to see how very few people but can really leverage, because they know the company by heart, they can very leverage the various assets of the company. And now we are now entering a phase where we are seeing how some of the social entrepreneurs or their innovations could be accelerated by the assets of Boehringer in new markets, or because they have the technology, because they have the distribution network. You can name it. There are many, many ways to co-create. And I think that this is an interesting way to look at one particular industry, but you could apply this in various industries, actually, in order to see how people coming from totally different worlds, who don't speak the same language, don't have the same reference, don't have the same even interest, can actually work together towards a common goal. And this is quite interesting today. So this is what we wanted to share with you, what we are willing to do, and what we would like also to set as things to be challenged. Is that we believe that there are three main areas of work that we need to work on now. The first is to what we say, changing the conversation, meaning putting this topic under the spotlight, making sure that people speak more and more about co-creation, about hybrid models, and so on. And even though this is not probably precise enough for many people, but the fact that we start talking about that will create also the excitement and the movement around that. If you remember what happened around social entrepreneurship, it was exactly the same. People did not get it at all at the beginning. Then, using the word and putting this in the lexical of everyone was really important. So we need to do that, and actually we are currently launching a European initiative, because co-creation is not just about developing countries again. It is very relevant to our continent as well. We are developing a program which is a co-creation center based on 3 pillars, which will be working on: one, changing the conversation, what I just said. The second thing will be about building capacity, making sure that the leading business schools, that all the education environment is aware of this and willing to enter the game and to invent curricula, etc. We have developed a partnership with HEC and ISTRA about developing a very specific curriculum for executives who want to learn more about that and can apply. They can go for 1 week on the field, understand those hybrid models, then see how to apply them in their companies. So it's just one example. Obviously, and the most important aspect is, how do we co-create concretely? Because it has been said this morning, there is a lot of discussion around co-creation, a lot of discussion about what we should do, what we would like to do, but let's do it now. So the idea is really to identify, and this is what I was mentioning in the introduction, it's really to identify the key topics that we really want to change in the coming few years. It's not something that has to happen in the next 20 years, it has to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And if we want to change the way we provide jobs to youth in Europe, or the health system, or the way nutrition is not only produced but also distributed and so on, we only can change those games and those ecosystems if we work together. So what is really important, I think, today is really to identify several opportunities, topics that we would like to work on together. So this is what we mainly wanted to explain to you and to share with you. I think that we need to go into very concrete example between SAP, and maybe you want to introduce Anka?
Yes, so Anka, if you want to come and share your testimony, so Anka is the global head for diversity at SAP. SAP has announced recently a partnership with Facilitators. That's an organization working on with autistic people. And so she will tell us a little bit about how the partnership started and how this co-creation has been brought to life, and also what's the future of the partnership.
So, what do you want? Just here? Perfect. Yeah, so I would like to go a little bit back, because when did it all start? The entire project is called Praya, and it started about 2 years ago in India. And some of our employees started to work with children with autism. And they did not only start to work with the children, but also with the teachers and the parents. And what they did was they started to use technology. And in this case, it was iPads to communicate, but also to help them, so to help the children with autism to communicate with their parents and so on. That was the first step, and we realized, wow, there's a very natural fit with technology and people with autism. And we took it to the second step, and that was that we started to work with the Society of Autism in India, and we offered education for people with autism on a very regular basis. And at the same time, what we did was we sat down with people with autism, so our developers sat down and started to develop apps with people with autism, but also for people with autism. So it's called, for example, BOL, which helps people with autism to communicate, to improve their communication skills, to learn to speak, and to learn to articulate better. And again, we learned, wow, very special fit we have there. So we started to employ people with autism in the testing. In Bangalore, we have a big facility with about 5,000 people working there, and we do have a testing in there. So that means a testing for software, but also a quality insurance. And we employed 6 people with autism in the testing. A couple things that we learned, what was very interesting for us, is that people with autism have a very, very long period where they can concentrate on repetitive things, which is sometimes very hard for other people to do. But not only that, we saw also that the culture in that team changed quite drastically. So people with autism don't understand sarcasm. They always speak the truth. And they need a very clear and precise communication style. So they don't understand what you're trying to say between the lines. So in case in the morning, if somebody would come in late, and as a manager, you would say, wow, you had a good sleep. This person would look at you and would say, yes, I did have a good sleep, or no, I did not sleep well, but did not get the underlying message that you were late for work. So what we realized, let me just put this here. What we realized in that team was the termination period, the termination percentage went down. And termination is a big issue that we have had in India for a long time. The other thing was that employee engagement went drastically up. And that we got a lot of very, very positive feedback for people who had worked for a long time with SAP, because they started to really buddy with people with autism. But they also said there's a different kind of meaning for my work and a different kind of purposeful work I'm doing now. So I was there last year. It was exactly on the 14th of June, so it was about a year ago. And I was at the Autistic Society because I was giving out diplomas to the children who had gone through the education program. And then I talked to the developers and we said, wow, we should learn from this, and we should take this as a best practice and really roll it out all over SAP. Now, SAP is a software company. We have worldwide about 65,000 people, and we are in 120 countries. We are not experts in the area of autism, so we were looking for a strong partner. And what we did last year was we hosted an event in India. It was in all the papers in India. It was not on our grounds. That was very, very important for us. We just hosted it, and we invited people, external speakers, who were experts in regards to autism, the society, but also other people. And one of these speakers was Torkil Sonne, the CEO and the founder of Facilitators. Torkil himself is a father of a child who is autistic. Torkil used to work in the IT companies. And when his son was diagnosed to be autistic, he gave up his job and he founded this organization called Facilitators. And the goal for Facilitators is to create 1 million jobs for people with autism. So that's how we got to know Torkil. And then we said, well, if we want to take what we are learning in India on a bigger approach, we really need a strong partner who understands what he's talking about. And I think there's also one very, very important to think about it. And I think, Stéphanie, you had it in there, and I put it down. It's vulnerable populations. And that's very risky for us in corporate world when we say we want to work with people with autism on a bigger scale. Because what you get first is you want to have cheap labor. You want to exploit them. You want them to work longer than 8 or 9 hours or whatever we work. You don't want to pay the same salary. So we needed to also have somebody who's not only an expert, but who was a little bit an advocate for the vulnerable people that you just mentioned. So then Torkil and I sat down, and in May this year, actually a couple of weeks ago only, we were in America together, and we said, well, we want to really take this to a bigger stage. So we announced a partnership now between SAP and Facilitators. Our goal is to roll this out this year still in Germany, in Canada, in America. Actually, our teams are right now, while I'm talking here, sitting in Copenhagen together to finish the rollout phase. And we want to have it in all other labs. We have another 12 labs worldwide for SAP, rolled out by 2014. Having announced that, we got the biggest media coverage. We never thought about. Torkil and I were thinking about the project plan. We were thinking about stakeholders. We did the clean project management. We never thought about the media coverage we would get. So we were on 400 articles and news. It was amazing. We looked at each other and we were not quite sure if we really liked that so much, because there's quite a lot of responsibility in it. But we got also a lot of very positive feedback from people with autism or organizations who just thanked, because they said, well, there's a lot of awareness now and we can make it a lot more public, and all these limiting beliefs that are out there we can work on. So there was quite a big of impact. So what we are doing now, the next steps is, and what is the role of Facilitators? Facilitators has for us right now 3 roles. One is a consulting role. What's the best way to do it? Also, where is it the best way to employ people with autism? Because they do have, the expertise and the knowledge and the experience to help us with that. The second one is Facilitators is doing for us the recruitment process. And that's very, very important. And now we're going to talk in the late afternoon again about recruitment. But I have been in HR, an HR professional for about 20 years. I used to work for companies like GE, TRW, and now SAP. And if I did an interview, there were 2 things I was looking for. One is be somebody who's real strong in communication and a team player. Now, if I would recruit right now for people with autism, that would not be good, because that's what I was more trained in. And I understand where my strengths are. Now, Torkil and Facilitators is looking very differently, because we looked at what do we really need. And we probably don't need this for the kinds of positions that we want to fill. So Facilitators is not only a consultant for us, they are also doing all the recruitment. They're also doing the assessment centers, and they also do the pre-work, the workshops to prepare people who have not been employed for a long time to be really able to go into corporate world. And the third one is they are also the voice of the vulnerable people. This independent third party where we want to ensure that we absolutely keep this kind of differentiation, what do you call it, the separation between the two companies to really ensure that. And we get a lot of positive feedback. Also from our employees, we have a lot of people, parents who are actually parents from people with autism, who say this is not only great, but how can we help? And what can we do? And I think we are really going to take it to the next stage. It's an interesting journey. This is going to be one part of what we want to do with people with autism. The other thing is we are an IT company, so we are right now creating a platform where we get the experts to communicate together, just to link them together. We already got new linkages there. We will do more on that. And we will start, as the next phase, also to develop together. Because, people with autism have a different way of thinking a lot of times and are very innovative. So that's something I hope that we will take also in the next step. And I think with that, we'll open it for questions. Okay.
Thank you. I think this is a great example of how a company, a pretty big company, can come with a small organization, because Uzbekistan is pretty small at the moment, but with a huge ambition, and can really reinforce each other, and how the way they do things will probably change a bit your culture, your view on the vulnerable people and so on. And I think this is a pretty interesting story, so thank you for coming here and sharing this with us. So we'd like to open now the floor to you guys. I hope you made the exercise to think about what you would like to co-create, what is important to co-create, or if you have particular questions to Anka, we would be happy to use the next 10 minutes in answering those questions or your remarks. Or
so when you still use the time to thinking, there was one thing I would like to still add. I'm responsible for diversity and inclusion for all of SAP globally. And there are a couple other projects I'm running. So like, for example, gender diversity, differently abled. And there's one thing I'm doing right now with my team is I'm trying to challenge, I say, what do we learn from this project that we are doing right now with people with autism? The one thing that we are for sure learning is that we cannot change the people. People with autism never going to understand sarcasm. It doesn't matter what kind of trainings you will give them. But we learn, well, we can do a lot to get them, but we can't change everything, I think. But there's one thing we are learning is we can really change an environment to be more inclusive. And I think that's something that we have to learn. Because in the last couple of years, when I talk about gender intelligence, getting more females into corporate world, was what did we do? A lot of times we trained them to speak like a man, to be dressed like a man, to negotiate like a man. That's not what we want when we talk about diversity. We want the uniqueness at the table. And that's what we are learning in this project. Yeah? I'm forcing right now, yes, I'm also forcing the management to really be inclusive and to help us to have this kind of environment. But that's really a point where we realize that we are making a big difference right now. And we are learning from that. Yeah.
Bravo, this is it's obviously a great project. There's nothing to say about it. Fantastic. Now, just a bit from a provocative side, and going back to the financial discussion we had before, how is it, SAP is a for-profit company,
yes,
right? How is your board of directors positioned vis-a-vis this project? And in your balance sheet at the end of the day, or in your income statement, is this just an expense line out of the question? Or is it, I don't know, how does it benefit SAP? What's the reasoning behind it?
Okay, couple.
I'm talking about the economic reason behind it. I understand perfectly well the social part of it.
No, it's not about, it's a couple of things. One thing is we talk about demographics and we talk about the war for talent. Well, there are people out there that we really need in our company that we don't get right now in the market, especially going forward. For example, in Germany, where I look at the demographics. So that's a clear business case behind it that I also presented to the board, and they said, absolutely, we are behind that. Second one is about innovation. SAP is a company that really relies on making innovative software going forward. You know, we have to find solutions. We talked about resources today. We talked about the allocation of resources. We have to think differently to be able to really meet these requirements. And there's so many studies out there that diverse teams come up and are more innovative. And that's, you know, we need to have this kind of diversity. So there's another business case. Now, this is not that easy. And what we are doing now is we're sitting down with PricewaterhouseCoopers to understand and to go and try to get more for the business case also, so to keep this really on a sustainable base. We don't do this to have a percentage of people with disability in our company. We don't even track it. Yeah? We don't want to track it. We want to employ these kind of people because of the abilities they bring to the table and nothing else. Yeah? Did that answer your question?
We have a couple of questions.
Okay. Well, quite interesting. Carlos Braga from IMD, and we are talking about co-creation. And the main question for me is, can you plan about this in an effective manner? I'm going to tell a story about one example of co-creation that I was involved. This is the 1990s. I was the manager of InfoDev at the World Bank, and among other things, we are supporting training programs on e-commerce in sub-Saharan Africa. So we had this Canadian company that goes to Ethiopia, and the guy is talking what is happening about e-commerce, the regulatory environment, the opportunities, and of course, Ethiopia at that point in time, not even 1 percentage point of the population had access to internet. So he asked, is anybody already here in this audience involved in e-commerce? Somebody raised his hand and said, yes, I'm selling goats on the web. And the guy was surprised and asked, how come? And then he explained. This, based on the diaspora, basically Ethiopians in Toronto, had put together a company that sold to migrants so that they could order the delivery of goats in Ethiopia, and then they had the structure there. So the interesting thing is this way they bypassed all the problems about internet connectivity, the questions of access to credit card, etc. So I told this story to Jim Wolfenson. He goes to Davos, he tells this story in one of the panels. A few months later, I meet with the company again, and they say, how are you doing? Oh, they were doing fine. Now we are selling goats on the web. Well, I told, but weren't you selling goats on the web? No, actually we sold ships. But since you told this story in Davos, then it became very popular. This is my example of co-creation. What I would like to ask you is, yes, it's a great example and a great project that SAP is doing about it. But if I understood correctly, it basically happened ad hoc, in the sense that somebody started this in India, nice, let's scale up, it's great. But what lessons, based on this, you would have to other companies? Is possible to plan co-creation?
Maybe in the interest of time, let's maybe group the questions, because I think that we'll need to finish in about 5 minutes. So I think we had 2 more questions.
My question is simply, I have found over the years that a very good anchor for this co-creation are cities. And I'm actually at the moment running 2 accelerators, one in the city of Rotterdam and one in the city of Cape Town. And I find that it's a very neutral platform. You have to choose them carefully, but to get the multi-stakeholders together. So my question to you is, have you actually done any work with cities in this project of yours?
Specialisterne is doing it right now. So Tokyo is actually in the US doing it. If that's gonna, that's for sure gonna influence a little bit our partnership, because we're gonna learn from that. We ourselves at SAP are not in a city. So there would be a Specialisterne who is doing it right now. So yes, he has taken that approach. I do know that. One more question, and then I will come back to...
Yeah, very quickly. Just to go back to Gustavo's question, is this going to be considered like an R&D expense, or is it going to be for SAP because this morning we said social entrepreneurs, basically that they reach break even. I know of some social entrepreneurs that reinvest the profits in the company. But what is really interesting is to understand how this will be sustainable in the future. Because we understand the model of social entrepreneurs, the hybrid model, what's going to be the difference in terms of the profit and loss type situation for this type of activity. Maybe
So
this was not
I don't
so
know
clear.
if this is the right political correct answer. Our goal is to really move this into the DNA of SAP. And that's what Facilitators is helping us with. And to be sustainable, we need this to be sustainable as a business, because we need to ensure that we are diverse. And this is just one part of integrating a different kind of people that we have not done before. I'm not sure if that's the right answer for you. Is that going to be, in regards to Facilitators, how we are going to do that on the long term? It is our goal to work with them on the long term. It is also our goal, to really create a platform to get more people like this together. And we don't want to do that exclusively with Facilitators, perhaps. And Facilitators is very, very open to that we bring other groups in and we really partner together. And I think that's what's going to make us long-term successful, because that is for us also the future, to be connected with each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Anka. Maybe for the interest of time, let's also talk about what kind of opportunities do you see? How do you see that this could move forward and more co-creation could actually multiplicate? I think we have the privilege to be here in Zermatt and to be among people who believe in partnership and the potential of partnership. How could we go further? How could we involve more person in the conversation? Can we deepen the level of the questions that we all have? Because of course there are still a lot of questions. We talked about what kind of governance, what kind of bonus incentives we could create in cooperation. So there's a lot of things to be done, and also a lot of new experiments to be put in place, whether this is in developing countries or in Europe. So we wanted to have a little bit of time and I think I'm looking at the organizer, I think we have just 5 minutes probably, to get some of your feedback, suggestions, ideas about what we could do. And as Arnaud was saying, if we meet again in a year from now, what we would like to see in terms of, progressing towards this goal of business and social partnerships.
Can we do that? I was otherwise going to come back to you afterwards. So you said, what is it that we were learning for a partnership, how to start it on a sustainable way, right? I think it has to be a natural fit between it. And I also think it needs to be on a very personal base. That's probably not to be less scaled, but it's very simple. Torquil and I met, and we trusted each other. And on this base of trust, we started to understand what we want to do and where we want to make a difference and what kind of a difference we want to make. And that's what I would always try to do again. It's on a personal engagement and it's based on trust.
So to answer your question, I've got 2 suggestions. Firstly, I think we too often start from a blank piece of paper. I've been in so many meetings, particularly with a couple of organizations that we're involved with, Business in the Community, International, and UN Business Partnerships, where there are months and months spent asking big companies, which are your priority countries and which are your priority issues? And then, okay, well, what will we do together? And unsurprisingly, not that much comes from it. What I think would be so much more helpful is if people who are involved in pilots or projects that they think have proved a concept and are working well, just like Ashoka wants to work with organizations that have already done a pilot, invite others to join and say, we could scale this up, we could replicate this if only we had skills or resources X, Y, and Z. And I think, Anka, your example is taking us to that level. My second suggestion is typically partnership managers in a company might reach out to a few people in their organization with particular expertise that they think can help on a particular issue. What we found is we have a crowdsourcing innovation tool called Brave Banana, and we found that that's a fantastic way to reach out to a much, much bigger KPMG crowd to get some really innovative ideas. So I guess that SAP would also have something similar in many other companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other sort of suggestion? Any brave person who wants to to share some impression? It could be also a question or.
I really like your suggestion, but I'm quite sure that people are struggling with their project at the moment. So please stand up and just tell people what you need. And maybe someone who do have someone courageous who want to take the lead on that. Anyone there? Yes, thank you.
I've been coming to Zermatt since the beginning. And I live in India. And I've been trying to use the arts in the broadest sense, from television to performance, to bring about social change. And in the year 2000, some of us got together and found the funding to start 4 language television channels called Tara, to see how television could be used, as ham radio was used in America in the 50s, to bring about transformation in regions. Now in India, of course, when you talk of a region, you're already talking of something the size of France or Germany. But I used to be CEO of, much talk has been going on about Ahmedabad. I used to be CEO of the channel that was in the state where Ahmedabad is. It's a channel, state called Gujarat. And we set up the channel as an activist channel. Because one of the problems in India is that if you go and say to somebody, why is this happening? They will shrug and say the government doesn't do it. And most people are completely silent. Nobody has ever asked them for their opinion. Nobody has ever asked them what they think of anything. So we wanted this channel to be something where people could actually come and talk and become empowered to bring about change. And within the first 3 months of it going on air, it became a channel that everybody wanted to go to. We used to get these phone calls in the middle of the night saying, so-and-so is being corrupt, is asking me for a bribe, and my wife is trying to give birth, and we can't get a bed, can you send your thing? So it was hugely, and all the sort of statistics showed that we were the most watched channel. We also became the most unpopular channel because we used to do sting operations that showed how many companies in what is called the Golden Triangle, which is the chemical hub of Gujarat, were actually pumping effluents back into the earth, so that there were 70 villages where not a single child had been born normal for 20 or 30 years. And we were doing these sting operations. So at the end of 2 years, in a sort of tacit fatwa between the government, which is a Hindu right-wing government, and the corporations, they shut us down. For 10 years, I have been trying to find funding from somebody who isn't afraid of being on the cutting edge of saying, I want to make this change, because this is a model of television that can actually transform countries and can be not only scaled up, but it can be used as a pilot and taken across the country, across the world, because it uses the most popular genres of television to actually empower hundreds of thousands of people. And the funders don't want to give us money. Governments certainly don't want to give us money. Corporations don't want to give us money. But from 30 years of experience of doing this work, I know that I am sitting on something that can make a significant difference in empowering and improving society. Where do I go for money?
That's a good question. So I don't know whether we're going to answer this question right now, but at least I think that people now recognize you and can come to you if they have some ideas. But let's make sure that we can follow up on that, and that maybe we can circulate this among the network and what we could do, because I'm quite sure that we are already running late. But it's probably we have something at here. No? Yeah, sorry. It's probably to share with you the various initiatives that can come up either from people in the room who don't feel like sharing it today, and other social entrepreneurs or corporations who are willing to do something. Maybe SAP could find partners here who are willing to extrapolate the type of project you are doing to their corporations. So if you agree with that, we're going to keep this community living and sharing examples and ideas and opportunities to engage you with this, because honestly, if we don't do it here, I don't know who's going to do it. So, and I think that to answer to the question of the the AMD person, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but I think that if we want to avoid that this becomes an ad hoc thing, we need to increase the opportunities for companies to talk to social entrepreneurs and to social entrepreneurs to talk to companies. If you can increase that, I can tell you that we can dramatically increase the likelihood for this collaboration to happen. Do you want to add something?
Hi, I'm Philippa. I'm from Street Kids International, based out of the UK. I wanted to share another example, which is not dissimilar from the SAP example in some ways, of a co-creation that we have undertaken with business process outsourcing companies in India and in the Philippines, who had identified, as have many organizations over recent years, identified a gap in the skills that they needed for entry-level staff coming into the business. They were unable to fill their entry-level jobs. Meanwhile, we were working with marginalized young people from slum communities, street youth, who are struggling to find employment. So we co-created a model working in partnership with local NGOs who know this youth population and who are able to go out and recruit and train and crucially provide technical skills training, but also employability skills training, which is the piece where we kind of become the partner in this creation, and that we have enterprise skills training and employability skills training to bring to the table. We have employers, the BPOs, who are providing work experience and paid placements, paying minimum wage within the organizations, not necessarily guaranteeing jobs, but providing that crucial step into the working world and giving those young people the opportunity to understand what it looks like to be on the inside of a big business, giving business the opportunity to understand the value that those young people are able to bring, the reduction in their recruitment costs, the increasement in their retention rates. And this is something, like I say, that we've piloted in India and in the Philippines, and we see potential to roll out in other emerging markets and other places where this skills gap exists between businesses who need employees and kids who need jobs, and sort of straddling that gap, if you like. There you go. Again, anyone who wants to help.
You want to?
Well, I see Yael standing up, so I think that our time is over. So I think we'll have more opportunities to discuss at the break or continue the conversation over the. Oh, okay.
Okay. Who?
Just.
Yes, my name is Hervé Lando. I'm managing a family office in Paris in Cyrus Group, a money manager, first private money manager in France, inside which we have a family office for wealthy families. Inside this family office, we have a specific philanthropy line of services. I would just say that one of our goals is actually to develop a platform to make the meeting happening between philanthropy projects and families, wealthy families, and I would say and family enterprises. So I invite everybody that want to be in touch for such meetings to happen. You can bring your ideas and projects and collaboration suggestions to us, and we will be happy to suggest it to our clients and the families we are going with all along the time.
Thank you. Yeah, you're gonna be very popular, my neighbor say. Be ready to receive a lot of business cards. I think that we are reaching the end of this.
Our session is over. I'm told that we have 5 minutes to take a breath before and run a little bit around before the next session. So I hope that the conversation could continue over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.